future and the past. All these thoughts on things that don't last. Every second thought on what's false and true. Every third thought on you. Every third thought on you. Every thought on what was once green and new. All these thoughts like colors fade to blue. Every second thought feels borrowed and untrue. Every third thought on you. Every third thought on you.
There we go. David Duchovny, how are you today? Look at you.
I have to accept that. Okay, yes, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Look at that compound. Where are you coming to us from, David?
I'm LA. I'm in LA.
In LA. Wonderful. Yeah. So, David, obviously a pleasure to have you, author, actor, singer, songwriter, and your new album, it's out August 20th, available wherever music is sold. And it's a wonderful album, David. I have to tell you, not just saying it because you're here, but we've been listening to it for a week since Erica sent it to us. And the 12 songs, they just fly by. It's a really great experience. So congratulations, David.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. From Nights to Harder to See. It's just like a smooth listen. Right. And your vocals sound wonderful as well, David.
Getting better, Practice, not perfect, but so that's certainly been, since I first started to record, or even like started to think about recording. I mean, at first I had this illusion that they'd be able to just make me sound amazing, no matter how I sounded. They could auto-tune me, or
right,
without making it sound phony. And then I realized that's not the case. So since I thought about recording, I was able to find a really good voice teacher, a guy named Don Lawrence. And I really, I've worked hard on, it's fun. It's not hard work, but I've focused a lot on trying to become not necessarily a better singer, but just trying to use my voice,
Sure.
So that's been a real journey in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Just the idea of like, oh, I'm going to sing. And then, to know that I was going to sing live, that was the next step. It was like, oh shit,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, you sound great. And just going back to like your first couple albums, this is definitely your peak vocal form. We love it, David. And, David, when we were doing the research, I think it was during Stay Until, where we had this realization that, man, like, these songs are so beautiful and they're more layered than your previous albums. And we got us thinking, was last year almost like a good thing for this album, David? Because it's just so perfectly made in a way.
Well, certainly in terms of the production, and production is so important, as you know. We were almost done with the entire album over a year ago, right before the first lockdown. We had gone from like 18 songs that we demoed, 14, and then we'd chosen like 12 that we really wanted to record. And we were in the midst of starting to record them when we had to lock down. So we lived with these 12 songs all year and kind of thought about them and conversed between us, the band and I, about ways we wanted to go in terms of production and instrumentation and just feel and vibe. So it's way more time than we would have spent, had we just kind of finished it before I had to go for the summer, back then, a year and a half ago. So, and also in terms of like songwriting, there was something also about, like, lyrically, there was something about the lockdown, something about the isolation of the pandemic that made you want to really focus on the part of the songs that were really, universal, really like reaching out to the experience of everyone, not necessarily the experience during the pandemic, but just like the experience of being human, and making everything like as broadly reaching as you could while remaining
Right.
personal at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely, David. And you've talked about the lyrics before, and you just let's segue into that because the songwriting is A plus. Do you have like a writing room, David, where you go like 9 to 5 every day, like an office, like a very disciplined approach? What's your approach to songwriting?
No, I don't have that kind of discipline with songwriting.
Right.
Um, I I realize though that it's good to have it. That if you say, you don't get your lunch until you write a song, David. I'll have a song. I don't know if it'll be good, but I'll write you a song. And
Right.
I could do that every day, and most musicians could. It's just I think we have other pressures in our lives. Obviously,
Sure.
people in bands feel the pressure to write hits or write certain types of songs. So there's all these kinds of pressures that come on, and for me, acting was a pressure situation, like getting the next job that I wanted or maintaining a certain kind of space that I thought I should have.
Sure.
So music to me was like the opposite of that. I never wanted to feel like, oh, I've got to write a song. I just
Right.
wanted to feel like, oh, yeah, a song's coming on or whatever. It doesn't matter where I am, with this guitar. And at this point, because I do write songs, I kind of live in both worlds that way. I do wait for inspiration, but I also know that if I sit down and tell myself I'm going to write a song, I'll write a song.
I love that. I love that, David. And you've mentioned previously in some other interviews that that lyrics do come easy for you. Like you're a writer, of course, but the music, at least in the last couple albums, was more challenging than getting the words to you.
Mhm.
Has that evolved a little bit? With the pandemic and just in 2021.
A little bit, certainly vocally. I mean, I'm willing to stretch out a little more than I was before. Um, musically, in some ways, it becomes harder because in the beginning, I was teaching myself how to play, and I was by learning songs that I liked on the internet, just rock and roll. And
Sure.
I realized, oh, there's these chord progressions that are kind of repeating. Um, and I certainly then went and I wrote my versions of those chord progressions repeating. And
Yeah.
then after a certain point, I can move the capo around and change it a little bit. But after a certain point, I had to like grow beyond, those progressions and try to noodle around and find other progressions that I like. So it gets easier and it gets harder.
Right. Of course, because your standards also get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to do, is this really going to be another, GDA minor song? Come on, come up.
Right.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you don't know, you just don't know.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I love it. I love it, David. And David, for my audience that may not, know this part about you, I mean, you are relatively a newer musician. I mean, I think this is the 10th anniversary of when you've
Mhm.
picked up your guitar in 2011,
Yeah.
which is, relatively, it's not a lot. I mean, we're recording
Uh,
in Nashville, and you hear about these people that come from Kentucky and they had a guitar at birth, basically.
Hey, if I had begun when I was 10 and I put in 10 years, then I'd be a good guitarist. But if you pick up the guitar at 50 and
You're a
you put
good guitarist, David.
no, no, I'm not. And you can just get okay. I mean, unfortunately, there is such a thing as your brain, the brain of a very young person and the brain of an adult. And a
Mm,
young person's brain is just way more elastic and fluid.
sure.
And I watched it with my son. My son in 2 years became a way better guitarist than me, and because he's a kid.
Right.
So I don't have any illusions about it. I'm perfectly happy with my guitar playing. I wish it was better, but it's good enough so that I do my chords and I throw them around and I write songs. I don't need to play lead. I wish I could come up with riffs sometimes, and I try, but the fact that I can't play lead it's not like a heartbreak for me at all.
Right. Absolutely, David. But David, what was like the breakthrough moment? I mean, I know you always liked music. You were always into the Stones and the Beatles and the Eagles and all the classics. But what was the moment in your life, in 2011 or whatever, where you said, you know what? This is it. Like what happened? What was the breakthrough moment where you're like, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna do it right?
I mean, partly it was being on Californication. There was a lot of music around. There were a lot of musicians around,
Sure.
and I kind of reconnected with an old friend of mine whose son happens to be a tremendous singer-songwriter, a man named Keaton Simons, who I used to babysit actually when I first came out to LA. So I knew this kid as a kid.
Wow.
And now he's an adult and a full-fledged singer-songwriter performer. And when I reconnected with his mom, Eliza, I reconnected with him, and he was really the one that brought me into his studio in his garage in Venice and said, "Hey, let's just put your songs down.
Yeah.
I'll play." He's an amazing guitar player. I'll play. You sing your song. And so it was really Keaton and Eliza, and then but the moment of me like picking up a guitar, I mean, the cynical answer is I said, okay, I think Hank Moody should learn how to play guitar, and therefore David gets free guitar lessons.
Smart. Yeah.
Because that did happen. But and Hank Moody started playing guitar in the last season of the.
And for my audience, of course, Hank Moody is the character that David plays in
Yeah, so if you
Californication.
notice, he starts playing the guitar towards the end there.
There you go.
So there was that, and then the rest was just kind of little incremental steps towards writing songs and then recording them.
Yeah, totally, David. And before the pandemic, you were hitting quite a few shows on the road, and I'm sure you're gonna get started now with this new album. I guess the question, David, is you've always been around people. You've always, like been up, with your fans or whatever. But what have you learned is the difference between connecting with your fans from a stage with the music than, signing autographs or at a press junction or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is definitely something that was new about connecting during a concert, being up on stage. And there's something very intimate, but also very performative about it. It's like this, it's a very interesting difference in space. Like on the one hand, you're kind of singing to the first couple rows. Those are really the only ones you can see.
Right.
But on the other hand, you want to reach, the person that you can't see, so you've got to be bigger than you might normally want to be, but you also want to keep it real, so it's a tough one. It's almost like acting on stage, where it's different from acting on film, which is usually smaller. The camera will come to you, but
Sure.
if you're on stage, the camera's not coming to you. You got to go out and get them.
I love it, and we're glad you stepped up to the plate on that, David, because it takes some bravery. So we're glad you did it. You're being so good with your time, David. Let me ask you a couple questions, and I will let you get on with your day. And TV questions, actually, to segue a little bit. What's your take on binge watching, David? Because obviously, you made a career with the normal, one episode a week, cliffhangers, 3-month gap between seasons, that whole thing. What's your take on like Netflix, Disney, and all these systems being, dropping 20 episodes in one sitting?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not really the way that I watch, because I think my viewing habits were set in stone, my viewing habits were set with like, I got to get home at 8, I'm like running home because that's my one chance to watch this show. There's
Right.
no VHS even. I'm not going to get a chance to see that again. Or
You
movie.
miss on something. Yeah, you lose something.
Well, I remember reading something about, and this was about like when movies started to show on television, or you would get a VHS of a movie and play it on TV or CD or DVD and play it. And it was like, there was something about how when you had to go to the movie's house, which is the theater, you had to like go to her house.
Yeah.
the movie being a person. Like I got to go there to see the movie. Like I got to make the effort.
Right.
And there's something else about like sitting at home and I'm like, you know, I'm gonna pause that motherfucker and I'm gonna go do it. And there's a different relationship. It's like there's a certain amount of respect that you give to a movie that you have to go to the theater. You can't pause it. You know, you
Yeah.
got to shut up. You got to pay attention, or else you know you're gonna lose it. As opposed to I'm gonna go have dinner and then I'm gonna watch the end of it, and then I'll watch 3 episodes of this, and then I'll
Sure.
I'll stop it in the middle, and then I'll pick it up tomorrow. And you know that's the way it is, and it's great. It's very very easy. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, you would say, and I'm sure there's an entire generation of kids who will hear what I'm saying and go, well, of course. I mean, why would I want it to be like right here? I mean, this is great. I can do this. But there is something about it's almost like going to church. You know, like you can't like everything happens in the house now. You don't have to go out and make an effort to like meet this thing halfway.
Right. Right. I like that, David. All right. Well, one more question. Thank you so much, David, for your time. And it's
Yeah.
about Californication. You touched on Hank Moody. Um, you know, this character seems to have struck a chord with people in a very deep level, David. Just like whenever I, you know, I talk to people about shows or something, like Californication is like a staple. Uh, why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's because Hank is like a flawed human like we all are, and yet like he finds light and it's got like value thing? Like, why do you
Yeah.
think it struck a chord?
I think because on the surface, Hank seems not to have emotional or integrity values, but beneath that, he has kind of an honorable code that he keeps, and that he thinks for himself in many ways, and he doesn't just kind of parrot the company line that we
Sure.
do. So I think there's that. I think that if people could look beyond kind of the shiny, you know, the jokes or the sex or whatever, or you know, the sexiness of the show, to look beyond that to, you know, the heartbreak and the heartache and the family love and the love between Hank and Karen. You
Yeah.
know, I think this it kind of was this crazy combination of really like opposites, you know, and that somehow you were able to kind of, I don't want to claim that you can root for this guy, but it seems like you could root for a guy that keeps on doing the wrong thing, that keeps on shooting himself in the foot. But
Right.
also, to me, it was always, I loved playing a character that just always spoke his mind. Damn the consequences. You know, like if he saw bullshit, he called bullshit, and it didn't matter if it was going to result in him losing everything, you know. And you just wanted him to shut up, but he couldn't. And there's something lovable about that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, David Duchovny, you have said it all. Your third album, August 20th, it's a fantastic album. We're so glad we got a chance to preview it. The people will love it, David.
Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Dave.
I appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.